Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how the current car market conditions are going to absolutely decimate dealers. Things are already getting pretty rough for car dealers, and they're about to get even worse. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. Now I know that 99.9% of people that are going to watch this video are going to comment something like, good, car dealers need to be crushed and there's no reason to feel bad for car dealers. And hey, you can hold that opinion regardless of what you think of car dealers. They're about to go through some really tough times, and it's for a number of different reasons. So the first thing that is absolutely wreaking havoc in the dealership world is interest rates. Now, I just talked about in yesterday's video how the Federal Reserve went through with their latest rate hike. So they just increased interest rates by another 25 basis points. And even though a lot of people are going to say it's only 25 basis points, it just continues to make affordability a huge issue with cars. Right now, the average interest rate on a brand new car is about 9%, and the average interest rate on a pre-owned car is about 14%. And again, that's the average. So you will have some people that'll qualify for less than those numbers, but then you also have a lot of people that'll qualify for significantly higher than those numbers. I've had several dealers tell me that they have approvals coming back on auto loans that they're trying to get for their customers at, high teens to low 20s for new cars all day long, and with used cars, mid 20s plus. Like it's pretty crazy the interest rates that lending institutions are giving out. And again, these people don't necessarily have like the worst credit. Now, obviously, some of the dealership stories where I've heard people getting interest rates that are high 20s, those are people that definitely aren't the best with their finances. But there are people that have maybe just below average credit. They're getting quoted interest rates in the 20s because they're purchasing a pre-owned car, and maybe they're a bit upside down in the car that they're trading in, and so the loan to value ratio is not the best. And so the lending institution is like, yep, we'll give you a loan, but we're going to charge you a massive amount in interest. And so regardless, the interest rate situation is absolutely squashing affordability, and it's making it extremely difficult for car dealers to sell cars, especially to the average consumer. Now, the next big issue for car dealers is used car availability. Over the course of several videos, I've talked about how used cars are becoming scarcer and scarcer, and this is why we've seen wholesale values on used cars increase so dramatically over the course of the last couple of months, and retail values haven't increased yet. They've actually decreased, but with inventory continuing to shrink, I'm sure that those retail values will follow shortly. And so this means that, used car interest rates, like I said in the last point, are a lot higher. And on top of that, used car prices are about to start going up yet again. And used car availability is really bad. And so dealers are in the situation where they can't get used cars unless they want to pay all the money for those used cars. And the difference between the amount of money they're going to pay wholesale versus retail right now is actually really small on a lot of used cars. Most used cars that dealers have right now, they're not really making a whole lot of money on them unless they somehow magically put together a crazy good deal. And you pair that with, just put everything together, it's just this recipe for disaster, especially for used car dealers, right, that focus only on used cars. Like, they're going to get absolutely crushed in the coming months because, frankly, they're just going to see less customers. They're going to have to continue to, what I would say is overpaying for inventory because of the rush to buy used cars currently. And it's just going to put them in a situation where they could potentially be underwater yet again, like what a lot of dealers experienced in 2022. And I mean, you have that happen 2 years in a row, and that's like the perfect recipe for dealers to go out of business. And then for the dealers that happen to sell new vehicles, it's not any better for them. Yes, there is still some product that is selling really well on the new car market, and availability with that product, although not great for the consumer, is good enough for dealers that they're able to make some decent profits. But there's a lot of product right now out in the market that's just not selling. Any new vehicle that's between about $35,000, $40,000 to $100,000 is not selling, and that is a bulk of the amount of volume that will be sold in the US market is between those price brackets with brand new cars. Again, the average price for a brand new car is about $50,000. And the average $50,000 car is just not selling this market because the buyer that would typically purchase that $50,000 car can't afford that car because, first off, they're most likely upside down in their vehicle because of the decrease in used car values that we saw throughout the course of 2022, and interest rates are significantly higher than what they were over the course of most of the last decade. And so the interest they'd be paying on that car is so high that it balloons the car payment, so they can't afford the car payment anymore. And on top of that, automakers have decided to continue to increase the prices on these new cars and not release incentives that are effective enough to really stir up demand with new cars. And this is actually one of the biggest complaints that I hear from new car dealers is the prices on new cars. Like, people seem to think that dealers like these high prices. They don't like these high prices. They absolutely hate them. The thing that I constantly hear is, I wish that my manufacturer didn't increase prices as much, and well, since they did, I wish that they would release incentives now. They're waiting too long to release incentives. We're losing too many customers, and this is slowly digging us into a hole where we're stacking up with this inventory that we cannot sell. And so again, it's pulling together for this perfect storm. However, with all of that being said, dealers have definitely played a part into this whole situation, because most dealers over the course of the pandemic decided to charge over MSRP for brand new cars. The reason why I say most is because the average transaction price paid for a brand new car over the course of the end of 2021 and throughout part of 2022 was over MSRP. So that means the average car dealer decided to charge over MSRP for a new car. And now we're in a market that, although is starting to go back up with used car values, has declined significantly from the peak. And so you have a lot of people that are very upside down in their vehicles. And they're not upside down just because they paid over MSRP, but it's also because the dealer was able to charge them a huge premium on warranties and on accessories, because you have to remember, money was very cheap over the course of the pandemic and it was readily available. And so people have these huge auto loans on cars that frankly they should not have. And this situation is a lot more complex than it looks on the surface, because if you look at the situation from a customer perspective, you're just going to say dealers need to burn, we need to get rid of dealers, they took advantage of the situation and they're evil and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, hey, fair enough, but there are a lot of other businesses that did something similar over the course of the pandemic, and frankly, there are a lot of businesses that have done something like this over the course of history, right? Supply and demand, right? Any business is going to take advantage of supply and demand, and dealers naturally took advantage of this. But one key difference between the car market situation and other markets is that cars are more of a necessity, and on top of being more of a necessity, at least here in the US, they are a very expensive necessity. A car purchase is typically going to be the second most expensive purchase a person makes in their life. The first most expensive is going to be a home. And because these vehicles are a necessity and because they're so expensive, it puts this situation in a completely different category compared to what you might see with other businesses that might mark up their products in a market where their products are scarce. And I mean, a good example would be just with a sandwich. I'm just going to use that for this video. If a sandwich shop, let's say, is running low on a particular type of bread and everyone wants that bread, then, you know, they can decide to upcharge on that bread. But the thing about a sandwich compared to a car is a sandwich is very affordable, right? For the most part, right? It's maybe, I don't know, $5, $10, maybe $15. Maybe the sandwich shop marks it up to $20 instead of $15, let's say. Well, although that will hurt a person because they just paid $20 for a sandwich, let's say, that's not going to be nearly as financially devastating as if someone paid $60,000 for a car that they should have paid $50,000 for, right? Instead of being $5 in the hole for that sandwich they overpaid for, they're $10,000 in the hole for this car that they overpaid for. And so that's why this situation obviously makes people a lot more emotional and all that kind of stuff, and why, frankly, it's a lot more important to focus on compared to other markets, because cars are just so dang expensive. But if you happen to be anti-dealership, then you can rejoice, because yes, this situation is going to come back to haunt dealers. Frankly, it's already affecting dealers right now, because dealers are dealing with more and more negative equity, and negative equity means one of two things for dealers. It either means that they won't be able to put a car deal together because the person just won't be able to get bought, or affordability won't be there, or they're going to have to sacrifice a lot of profit they could have made on a vehicle to get a deal done because of the negative equity that the consumer has. I've talked about this over the course of several videos, but basically all you need to know is if a person has a lot of negative equity in a vehicle that they're trading in, then the dealership has to make sure that the loan to value is in line where a lending institution will actually give an auto loan for that consumer. And so what that typically looks like with someone that has average credit is the dealership has to discount the vehicle a lot off of MSRP, or if it's a used car, right, they've got to basically take it down as low as they possibly can just to put that deal together. And so again, this is why this situation is going to haunt dealers, because yes, they made record profits over the course of the pandemic, but now they're going in the complete opposite direction where they're going to make significantly less money because of all these consumers with negative equity. And that's not even to mention the fact that car dealers are just going to be making less profit overall from car deals, even from very well qualified buyers, because of the current situation that we are in. It's really difficult to charge a markup on a car when interest rates are as high as they are. Yes, there are dealers that are still attempting to charge markups, but they're not getting them unless it's within niche markets where people have a lot of money, and I can tell you those markets are continuing to shrink. And again, you have to look at this from a dealership perspective. Like, it's already really hard to convince someone to buy a car right now because the payments are so high. Convincing that person to not only buy a car, but then buy your dealership's warranties that are going to increase their payment even more when they already are paying more than they expected. It's just a situation where dealership profits are just going to be lower across the board. And so in summary, outside of certain niche markets or markets that have really high demand, the general trend across the car market is that dealers are going to absolutely struggle over the course of the medium term, and I would say the long term as well, because we have an affordability crisis mixed with what I would call a negative equity crisis, and this equals a dealership not making money crisis is what you might call it. And so it'll be interesting to see how the situation evolves over time, but I can tell you that dealerships right now are already making significantly less money compared to what they're making in the pandemic. Even though some dealers are selling more cars, again, they're making far less money on each of the vehicles that they're selling. And that trend is most likely going to continue as these interest rates continue to increase, as negative equity continues to increase as well. And so again, we'll see what happens, but I'm sure we're going to start seeing more dealers, not necessarily the new car franchises, but the used car lots go out of business because of this whole situation. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see ya.